Hello everybody. It is a pretty nice afternoon today, getting into evening. I think it's like 4 o'clock. And we're going to do some afternoon watering. But it also includes Sadie. She came out with me this morning to do the chores and she was very happy, but she was a little bit upset that it was only for about 30 minutes. She wanted to come out for a little longer, I think. So we actually have the cow trough filling up right now, which right now is the only hose we have. So we're just gonna get water from downstairs in the basement, which is normally what we do when it's frozen. But once the cow trough is filled up, we'll use the hose, but for now it won't be too bad. We'll just bucket the water. Before we water up here with like Molly and the ducks and stuff, what we'll do is we'll go down and use the hose down by the cow trough and be able to water the pigs and the chickens down there, since it'll be the easiest first thing to do. I've already come out here twice to see them flip this over, and it's just because they ran out of water today, and they can pull it down if they push on it hard enough, and it's finally filling up. So I thought, with us getting into springtime here pretty soon, it's mid-February right now, I thought it'd be nice to make a video talking about my top 10 biggest tips for new chicken owners, especially with the prices of eggs skyrocketing right now. I'm seeing some people are deciding to raise their own birds, seeing that that is going to be the best way. They also know where their eggs come from. But there's some tips that I wish I knew when I was a new chicken owner. So I thought I'd just go through some of my top 10 reasons with you guys. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna water these chickens. So my first tip for new chicken owners is to always make sure that the water is clean. So chickens will not drink dirty water. They will only drink dirty water if they are desperate. You can see these chickens are already pretty thirsty, and they tipped their water over some point during the day between this morning when I watered them and this afternoon. And one thing I like to do, especially in the wintertime, I will use these little red buckets. These help, they can all reach the water, and it helps when it's icy because those waters will get the ice stuck in them. And I can't even tell you how many countless times in the last couple years we've broken waters trying to get the ice out of them just because we didn't have anything else to put water in. 5-gallon buckets would be a little harder for them to drink out of. These make it really, really easy. They're also easier to clean. Check our egg status today. I see one really, really dirty egg and one really clean egg. That's plus in my book. It's still only mid-February, so 2 eggs a day, that's not bad. So one big misconception just about chickens in general is, and you may even believe this yourself, you need a rooster for your hens to lay eggs. That is 100% untrue. We know it for a fact because for almost a whole year we did not have a rooster for our first year with our layer hens. We had 10 layer hens and we got eggs very good. The roosters serve the purpose of fertilizing the eggs. So you do not need a rooster for your hens to lay eggs. And a lot of people think that all roosters are mean, and really not all roosters are mean. I have 3 roosters and none of them are mean at all. We've had 1 rooster in the last 4 years of homesteading that we've actually had to process because he was very aggressive towards us. And you only need 1 rooster per about 10 hens. And if you're not interested in fertile eggs, you probably don't need a rooster. So I was going to use this straw in here that we got from some friends that didn't need it all, who also have some chickens and some goats. Hi, goats. I was going to use this in the nesting boxes, but the hens don't really like straw. They tend to push it out a little bit more. We'll use some of the hay that fell out of the cow area. The goats don't actually eat the straw. They'll just chew on it and then they'll spit it out. It's so funny. I think it'd be cool to make another video talking about the difference between hay and straw, because for a long time I didn't even know the difference between hay and straw. There's actually a really, really big difference. So if you guys are interested in a video like that where I talk about maybe some misconceptions of farming, stuff like hay and straw, let me know. I would love to make a video like that. Another big thing I see with people getting into chicken owning is not being prepared enough. You need to make sure that you have a coop for them, whether that is buying one or building one. Sometimes building one can be cheaper, but sometimes buying one can be cheaper. It just depends on your circumstances. Oh yeah, this stuff will do good. It gets pushed out of here and then the cows don't eat it. You wasteful moo crew. You always want to make sure you're prepared before you get into chicken owning, because there's a lot of things with predators and your circumstances, and especially if you live in the suburbs, you need to make sure that your town or city allows chickens. Some people I've seen, they will get chickens before checking these laws, and then they end up having to give them up, which is sad, especially if you've already become attached to these birds. It's sad to give them away. And one big thing is, if you can't have chickens, say you live in the city, you can always look and see local farmers to be able to get your eggs from them. That's another way to be able to support smaller homesteaders and smaller farmers. That's a great way to support them and build their business up and be able to get healthy, fresh eggs. Going along with making sure you're prepared, you want to make sure you have enough space for your chickens. Now, obviously, we have enough space with all these 7 acres we have of land, but some people, especially people who live in the suburbs, may not have enough room for chickens. So you always want to make sure of that. There's lots of different articles and stuff that talk about how much room you need for chickens. I can't actually remember it off the top of my head. Also, we don't put them in situations where they could harm the chickens. So you see this guy, he's just going in here to check everything out, but he's too little to kill the chickens or hurt the chickens. But we also are careful with like Sadie and our other barn cat to make sure that they're not in a situation where they may try and harm a chicken. You also want to know the predators in your area. Maybe you want to free range your birds. What free ranging means is that they have free run of your property. And for some people that's easy, and for some people they don't want that. Maybe they don't want them pooping on their sidewalk or their porches. We don't like that. We had free-range chickens for about a year and a half. We switched to Premier One fencing because we got fed up with all the chicken poop everywhere. This also helps us not have to go on a hunt for eggs every morning, which is very helpful, especially when you want breakfast in the morning. So if you do want fencing, you need to make sure that you use a good fencing, whether it is Premier One electric fencing, which is expensive, but it's definitely worth it. Another thing you can use is you can build an actual run for your chickens, kind of like what we have up where our ducks are. The next thing I want to talk about is the big misconceptions about eggs. So these are things we didn't even know when we started owning chickens, and I think it's really important. And this goes along with like not having to have a rooster for eggs. Did you know you can actually eat fertilized eggs? I know different people who won't buy eggs. They'll only buy store-bought eggs because they know they're not fertilized. Chicken eggs can actually be fertilized, and we have roosters with our hens, and we can still eat our eggs. The biggest thing is to make sure that, this is one thing we do, is to make sure that the eggs don't sit longer than 2 days. And usually they don't sit longer than a couple hours because we come and collect the eggs. So make sure you're very cautious about getting the eggs. And also, not all chickens will sit on the eggs. You have to have what's called a broody hen, which I'll talk more about here in a few minutes. They will sit on the eggs. So like, there's special breeds for that, which I'll also talk about later. But the big thing is, most of the time you're not going to have where you're gonna crack an egg on the stove and there's gonna be a baby chick that's gonna pop out. That takes about 5 days for you to get that, and about 3 days to start getting the blood in the eggs. But because our eggs don't sit longer than a couple hours, we don't have to worry about that. So that's a tip. Make sure you don't leave your eggs sitting for too long. The thing is, you need sunlight for your chickens to lay eggs. Now, some factory farms have them inside, which is not as good for them to lay eggs. The yolks will be a lot lighter, and the yolks are darker the more protein they eat and the more sunlight they get. Alrighty, now we're getting somewhere. Almost full. So the next thing I'll talk about while I'm on this topic of eggs and broody hens is I will talk about hatching eggs and broody hens. So there's certain breeds that are more prone to being broody, and basically what broody means is basically when a hen will sit on eggs. And when they sit on eggs, they will only get up to drink water and eat food 1 time a day, if that. Some days the hens won't even get off the eggs. And that's a 21-day period. So this is another reason why you need to make sure you're picking your eggs up every day, because if you do have these breeds that are prone to broodiness, this could result in eggs like that. So what do you do with the eggs if you find eggs and you don't know how long they've been sitting there? They could have been sitting there 5 minutes or 2 weeks. what I'll do is I'll either give them to Sadie or I'll give them to the pigs. And sometimes I'll even throw them in the compost pile. So there's multiple things you can do with these eggs. I try not to throw them in the trash. All right, there we go. All the nesting boxes have some hay in them. So that's a big thing. Make sure you're picking your eggs up every day, and that'll help with that. And if you want broody hens, I'll talk about this more into the summertime. I'll probably make a couple videos on hens that we have that are broody. Go through the whole process this summer of having a broody hen and the tips for that. There's also some great books on this that talk about chicken health and stuff, and about broody hens, talking about what they need and about moving them into a safer area. Sadie is searching for eggs. The hens will sometimes lay eggs in this hay. Find any? I don't think he did. I already picked some up this morning. Another thing to talk about, chickens are omnivores. They will eat anything. So I've seen my chickens get frogs. I've seen them get little snakes. I've seen them get worms and different bugs and all kinds of stuff. So a tip is to make sure that your chickens get outside time. So make sure they can get these bugs in this green grass, whether it is if you have to have a fenced in run or you're allowing them to free range. It can be a little harder for them to get bugs if they're in a fenced in run. But my chicken coop moves, so we'll move it every couple days during the summertime. And during the winter, it stays put a little bit more because they really do destroy it during the wintertime. And I'd rather not tear up the pasture. Another thing, which is a big misconception about chickens, you don't actually have to clean your eggs. Let me explain this a little further because you may not understand exactly what I mean. No, you're not getting these eggs. So check these two eggs out. So we have this egg, it's covered in chicken dookie and some other yolk. So it looks like egg cracked in the nesting boxes and yolk got all over the egg. Now look at this egg. It's pretty clean, right? This egg, I'll do one of two things with. Either I will give this to Sadie or another one of the animals on the farm, or I will clean this egg. Now this egg is dirty enough where I'm just gonna give it to Sadie here in a minute. But look at this egg. This egg is almost perfectly clean. Chickens actually lay eggs with a bloom on the eggs, so that helps from bacteria in the eggs, bacteria from their poop and different things like that getting into the egg. Because remember, chickens' main purpose with the eggs is to have more chickens and baby chicks. So this bloom helps protect the baby chick on the inside. But it also helps make sure that our eggs don't get contaminated that we're gonna eat. So by washing them, it destroys that bloom. And eggs, once they are washed, they can only be in the refrigerator for about 1 to 2 weeks, and then they start to go bad. But with the bloom on, you don't want to put them in the refrigerator. You can leave them to sit out on the counter for up to 2 months. And we've done it. We've left eggs on the counter for 2 weeks sometimes because we just have a lot of eggs in the summertime, and they're perfectly fine. Did you know that it's only in the US that we actually wash our eggs and refrigerate our eggs? All other countries actually don't wash their eggs, they leave them out on the counters. So that is one big misconception about eggs. So if you have eggs and you're making sure your nesting boxes are nice and clean, you can leave eggs like this to sit out on the counter. Now you don't want to do that with store-bought eggs because they actually clean them beforehand before they send them to the stores. So you do not want to leave eggs from the store out on the counter. And and if you get eggs from a local farm, you can ask them, and sometimes they'll even say on the label whether they have been washed or not and can be left on the counter. Here, Sadie, you want an egg? And it is gone. I don't know if she's gonna eat that shell or not. Oh, okay, we're gonna eat the shell too. Okay. And another thing is to make sure your chickens have a dust bath. You may not know what that is. It's actually exactly what it sounds like. It's a pit of dust. So chickens will actually roll around in the dust, and they do it a lot under the coop here. It's kind of wet today, so it makes it harder to be able to see it. So you can do it with like dust. You can put it in like a little litter box, and sometimes the hens will even create it themselves. Keep down any bacteria they may have and any different like mites and stuff. It's muddy. Another thing is to make sure, and this goes along with like kind of being prepared, making sure you have your breeds picked out. Like this girl, for instance, she's a black Australorp, and they are good. They're a dual purpose breed actually. So they do pretty good with eggs, and they're pretty good for meat too. And there's other breeds like the white leghorn that are really good for egg laying. And there's also different hens like the Americana that are good for different egg colors. And that's another big thing is some egg colors are different, so you always want to make sure that you have the breeds you want. And some are more expensive, and you can even get fancier breeds that you might see show birds. The ones with the little poof on top of their head, those are called Polish birds. They don't do as good with laying eggs. They're actually more for show. They're actually show birds, so they're more fancy breeds that you can have. So there's a lot of different things you can customize, the different kind of birds you want. Me, personally, I like to get a couple fancy chickens. As you may remember, Short Stuff, who we used to have, unfortunately passed away due to a fox this spring, which she was actually our longest living chicken, unfortunately. But there's different birds like that don't lay a lot, but Short Stuff was a very broody bird. She was very, very little, and she hatched out very many birds that we have to this day, that other hens, maybe they would start to sit on the eggs, and then they would leave the nest and not come back. That's sometimes what hens will do, different breeds will. So Short Stuff would go in and she'd sit on the eggs, and she mothered many different kind of birds. There's even other breeds that are really, really good for meat. For instance, you've probably seen our big Cornish cross that we have that lives with our hens. He didn't go to processing with the rest of our birds, he actually stayed behind. And we've grown him up, and I don't know what we're gonna do with him. He kind of just lives down there with them now. But they're really good for meat, and there's other breeds that don't grow as fast as they do. So they're all different kinds of breeds, and you can check out, there's different hatcheries that talk about them, and there's hundreds of different breeds that you can choose from, and it's really exciting to really be able to customize what kind of birds you want. So here's my 10th tip for new chicken owners, and that is that chickens will not start laying eggs until they're 6 months old at least. And there's actually different breeds that lay eggs sooner than others, and some that start laying around 6 months, and there's others that won't start laying till about a year into their life. Hey, thanks to everybody that's watched this far into the video. I'll give you guys a bonus 11th tip for everybody that stayed this long into the video. One big thing is biosecurity, especially with the avian influenza we had this past year. I've heard of a lot of people that have lost birds to this. So big things you can do to keep down risk of disease in your birds is to make sure, for instance, these boots that I wear on the farm, I won't wear them off farm. So for instance, I won't wear them in the feed store, and I also make sure that I don't really let people in to see my chickens very often, so they stay out and stay at a distance, because you never know what people could be wearing on their shoes. Here on the farm, we have a very high value for life, so we don't want to put our birds at risk of any sort. We don't want to put our birds at any sort of risk. So that's a big thing, is to make sure you have biosecurity. Make sure if you bring new birds onto the farm that are maybe a little older, that maybe you get from somebody, you need to make sure that you quarantine them for at least 24 days. So those are my 11 big tips for people getting into chicken raising. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching this video, and I hope that you guys learned a little bit of these tips. So thanks guys for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.